And new class starting in here next Sunday, and certainly invite you to be a part of that. We've been in a series called Shepherding the Flock of God. It's based on a book by a guy named Tommy South. He's a preacher in Virginia. I think the church where he preaches is called Glen Lake Church of Christ, something like that, near Richmond. And today we're on chapter 13. We do have permission to give you the book, at least in electronic form. So if you'd like a copy of the book, I can give one to you, a soft copy, an electronic copy. So just see me or see Glenn Barron, and we can get you a copy of this book if you want it. Today we're looking at the idea, the whole class is about what do elders do? What should elders do? What are elders like? What is the job like? And today we're talking about elder as defender. The title of the chapter 13, is Shepherd versus Wolf. So the idea today of the elder as a defender, defending the church from those who might destroy it. One of the difficulties in that part of the job is making a distinction between cultural norms, traditions, and scriptural doctrine. Now, we want to defend scriptural doctrine, but we don't necessarily want to defend cultural norms. My wife, Janet, tells me about a time when she was growing up in the church where she was growing up, where girls and women wore dresses. Nothing but dresses was acceptable. I see Ann Underwood nodding her head. You remember that. And Betty, maybe others do. That was, I think, a cultural norm. Janet said she still remembers how awkward it felt to her the first day she went to church wearing pants or something other than a dress, that it just felt so awkward. Well, I would classify that as a cultural norm. That's not something we need to defend. It's just things change, and we need to adjust. But I don't remember, I was not a part of all that, but I don't remember any elders trying to demand that women wore or wear dresses. We used, in this church, there was a time when we had men who would serve communion. That's just fairly recently, just before COVID. And there was a time when all of the men would wear ties. That was kind of expected. The fellow that organized who would serve on that day, he wanted every man to wear a tie. We even had a collection of ties back in this room back here. Some of the ties were pretty bad, but they were ties. I know some of you remember that. And Rick was involved in that. So that was a cultural norm. That was fine. But it wasn't necessarily something we needed to defend. So making a distinction between those things is part of the difficulty, right? It's part of the difficulty in figuring out what needs to be defended. This is the text for the lesson. Let me just read it. I know you can read it on the screen. Pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. The background for this is Paul has been on his third missionary journey. So he's been in Ephesus, chapter 19, and he stayed there several years in Ephesus. He goes through Greece for several months. He's in Greece. And now he's trying to get back to Jerusalem. It seems from reading other letters in the Bible that he's probably carrying money a large sum of money maybe for a donation to help the saints in Jerusalem who are in a difficult time. So he's in a hurry. He wants to get back to Jerusalem by, I believe it's Pentecost. So he makes his way through Greece and then in the beginning of, in chapter 20, where we are now, he's in Troas. You remember that story? Troas on the Lord's Day when he preached till midnight. And now he's going to get on a ship and work his way back to Jerusalem. It's not really clear to me if he chartered the ship himself or if it was a trading ship that stopped at various places. But at any rate, he is headed back to Jerusalem. He doesn't want to stop in Ephesus. He's already been there for years. When he left Ephesus, there was a huge uproar, a riot. You remember that story about the silversmiths' revolt? The ones who made money selling statues of the goddess Diana said, this guy's ruining our business. He's preaching that the goddess is no goddess at all. And so there was a huge riot about that. So Paul leaves town in an uproar, leaves Ephesus. He really doesn't want to go back. He doesn't want to be delayed in getting back to Jerusalem. But he does want to talk to the elders of the church in Ephesus. He does want to talk to them. It's maybe, so they're stopping, this boat is stopping at Miletus, 35 miles down the coast, south of Ephesus. And so he sends a message to the church in Ephesus and asks the elders to come and meet with him. So they do. And now he's talking to them. And this is just part of all that he said to those elders. He said, be careful, or pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. So we talked a lot in this class about the word overseers and bishops and shepherds and elders and pastors. But all of those terms refer to the same office, to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. Who does that sound like it's talking about? Which he obtained with his own blood. Who's the he there? Jesus. But the Greek word is God. This is one of about 10 times in the New Testament where it explicitly speaks of Jesus as God. Jesus was God and man at the same time. So care for the church of God, the church of Jesus, the church of Christ, which he, Jesus, obtained with his own blood. I know that after my departure, fierce wolves, that's what we're talking about today, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things to draw away the disciples after them. I don't know if Paul is really saying, you know, the specific people I'm talking to right now, from among you will arise men speaking twisted things. Maybe it's like when Jesus was talking to his 12 apostles, he said, one of you will betray me. Maybe it was like that. Paul had been with them 3 years. He knew those elders well. And maybe he just knew that one of them would. Ken?
Coming behind Paul were these Judaizers that would come around preaching a slightly different gospel, and that these Gentiles need to be circumcised and follow other Jewish traditions and laws to be part of the church. And so he was always combating that these guys would come behind. I believe that maybe who he's referring to, these fierce wolves, because that would certainly divide the church.
Yeah, so Ken mentioned that Paul had to battle this idea that you need to be circumcised to be saved. You need to keep parts of the Old Testament law to be saved. And that was something he battled fiercely. And maybe that's part of the twisted things that he's talking about. It could be other things as well. In Ephesus, there were those who taught this Gnosticism, this idea that there are secret things that you need to learn, and only we know. We'll have to teach you these secret things if you want to be saved. And there's a distinct separation between body and spirit. So the things that you do in the body don't really corrupt your soul. Don't worry about that. The Nicolaitans were in Ephesus. They abused grace. They said you can do whatever with your body. Grace will cover it. All of these things. And certainly what Ken mentioned, the idea that you've got to keep parts of the Old Testament law. Some of those must have been the twisted things that Paul mentions here. So from among your own selves, whether that's you guys individually or from the group of elders in Ephesus or just elders in general, from among you will come some of these problems. It wasn't too long after this time that the way the church was governed was corrupted, so that it began to be one elder over a whole group of churches. And that was not the New Testament pattern. We see even in this passage, has made you overseers, plural. More than one elder for this one church. That's the New Testament pattern. Not one bishop over a whole group of churches. So any or all of those things could have been the twisted things that Paul mentioned here, to draw away disciples after them. Therefore be alert, remembering that for 3 years, Paul had been 3 years in Ephesus. For 3 years I did not cease night or day to admonish everyone with tears. That's in Acts chapter 20. So this was more than just a reunion. This was a difficult meeting because he wants to let them know. First of all, it says in another place in the passage, I won't see you again. I won't see you again, and you need to be alert about these things that I want to warn you about. He mentions two groups, so outsiders, fierce wolves who will come in, and he mentions insiders, people from within the church, even from the group of elders that would cause problems. You know, even by the time that John wrote down the revelation that he had, the very first church he mentions is the church in Ephesus. Remember what he said, that you've lost your first love. He said to the church in Ephesus in Revelation chapter 2, the very beginning of the chapter. So problems were coming for the church in Ephesus. False doctrines, like the Judaizing teachers, the Gnosticism, the Nicolaitans, changing church government, all of those things were coming, and a lot of it was centered in Ephesus. Jesus did say to the church in Ephesus in Revelation, I do give you credit for this. You hate the teachings of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. The Nicolaitans were the ones that corrupted grace by saying, do whatever you want. Sexual immorality is no problem. Grace will cover it. And Jesus said, I hate that doctrine. I hate that. That's not right. Notice that he says, which he, Jesus, obtained with his own blood. The church is worth defending. The price paid for the church is great. And to Paul, and it should be to us as well, the church is worth defending. These are Glenn Barron's slides. He uses these bills. I don't use them, so I may mess up a few times. There's a continual threat to the church from outside and from within, even from men who serves as overseers. So shepherds in the church should be alert, proactively guard the flock from all threats. I'm not sure if this is Tommy South who said this or these are Glenn's words, but there is a continual threat to the church. If nothing else, there's a continual threat from our culture, right? I think of such things as pornography that's so readily available on even our phones, so readily available to young people, and what a temptation that is for young men. And it's just ubiquitous. It's easy to get. It's right there. It's everywhere. So that is a continual threat. How do we guard against that? How do elders guard against that? Well, that's hard, but at least we can be willing to talk about it, to say we're not embarrassed to talk about this, to make sure that we teach and we encourage and we try to help young people to realize the danger in these kinds of things. There's a continual threat from social media, right? There's so much that's divisive, and politics is basically anymore just trying to set one group against another. This group is awful. No, this group is awful. And that's basically what I see in the political postings on social media. That's continually there. It's continually something we need to guard against. Even in our own church family, sometimes I see some of us post those, this group is terrible, no, this group is terrible. And we need to be so careful about doing that. It can divide us. So identify danger, lead the church away from it. Know when and how to intervene when threats are present. This reminds us of a verse in 1 Peter 5:8. I'm not sure if it's about to come up on the slide, but I'll just mention it now. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." What vivid imagery here. Peter talks about a lion, and Paul talks about wolves. It's, to me, a similar idea, that the devil, like a lion, seeks to harm us, and wolves that may come into the church seek to divide us. Vivid imagery. Even simple things like football, sports teams, schools. I remember some years ago we had a girl in the youth group, a leader, really in our youth group, and she went to one of the high schools in the county, and I remember her saying, "I hate the kids in this school." Well, that's not good. That's not good. We need to have a stronger bond than that. Not to hate each other over schools or football or politics or any of those things, because we have a common faith that needs to bind us. I'm talking a lot, and if you want to say something, please do. Please do. The fierce wolves, as Paul calls them, could be identified by their actions, the way they operate, the traits that characterize them, and they're exactly the opposite of what we find in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is not arrogant. And if there's a person who is just arrogant about almost anything, then that's a concern. A person who insists on his own way, those are things that are warning signs that we need to watch for. The men that Paul talked about were selfish, pursuing their own agenda without regard to what it might do to the church. I'm told that people who are trained to identify counterfeit money don't study counterfeit money. They study the real currency. Just what does real currency look like? What are the fine details of a real $100 bill? And then if you see a counterfeit, you'll realize something's off here. It doesn't have these characteristics of true currency. It's the same thing here. This is the true currency for Christians. This is truly the way that we ought to be. And that will help us to recognize someone who is out to hurt the church. Tommy South in his book tells a story. Remember I mentioned he's a preacher for a church in Virginia. And he said that they had a fella named Jim. And he says Jim's not his real name, but everything else in this story is true. I just changed his name. But everything else is true. So this fella Jim showed up, and he'd had this strange idea. It seemed strange to me anyway. He didn't like using the word communion to refer to the Lord's Supper. I don't know where he got that. Tommy doesn't really go into it. He didn't think we should use that word. It's the Lord's Supper, he said. You can't say communion. Well, he would bring that up almost every Bible class. He would disparage, harangue people who use the word. It's just causing problems. It's just causing problems. And Tommy said what the elders eventually did was talk to that fellow, and they said, if you don't want to use that word, that's fine. Don't use it. But you can't be doing these things that you're doing, giving people a hard time, trying to get people on your side to agree with you about this issue. You just can't do that. So I've never heard such a story about that particular issue, but Tommy said it happened in the church in Virginia where he preaches. But I think what the elders did was right. Many of us have ideas. Many of you have ideas that seem strange to me. Let's put it like that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Work out your own salvation. We don't all have to agree. But please don't make it a divisive issue. Please don't be disruptive with those things. Please don't be arrogant about this thing that you believe. Keep it between yourself and God. Paul said something like that in Romans chapter 14. Whatever issues he was talking about, he said, just keep it between yourself and God, and that's fine. But don't be disrupting the church over it. In Paul's day, there were some things that Paul would fight about, basically, and there's some things that he wouldn't. So there is a distinction. I don't like that phrase, salvation issue. Who am I to say what's a salvation issue? That's up to God. But it is true that some things are more important than others. So in Paul's day, what does it take to become a Christian? Do you have to be circumcised or not? To Paul, that was worth going to the mat over. I'm not going to allow people to teach that you have to be circumcised to be saved. It's not right. It corrupts the gospel, Paul would say. But on the other hand, there were things that he would sort of let slide. You know, do you want to keep this holy day or not? Do you want to eat food sacrificed to idols or not? Romans 14 is all about that. Paul actually had an opinion on it, and he would tell you if you asked. But basically, the bigger thing to him was, don't divide the church over it. Don't hurt a weaker brother if that's something that's important to him. Don't accuse somebody of having a weak faith or whatever because of these issues. Just do what you think is right. Keep it between you and God. But don't upset the faith of weaker Christians. So that's the challenge. It's certainly a challenge for elders. This issue, which one is it? Is it something that we really need to defend vigorously against? There's something that we need to realize that we're going to have different opinions, and that's okay. Let's just don't be disruptive about it. You could have taught this class, Bob, because you would do all that I'm doing is going through these slides that Glenn gave me and trying to figure out what are we talking about here. What a wolf is not. It's not a new or immature Christian. People who are new Christians have a lot of things to learn. And they may say things that aren't right. They may use language that's not biblical or not the language we're used to. That's not a wolf. That's just somebody who needs to learn and needs to grow and needs to mature. We don't need to attack a person like that. We need to help a person like that. We need to support and encourage and teach and love. That's not a wolf. It's not even somebody who disagrees with me, right? There's all kinds of things that we likely don't agree on. And that's okay. That's okay. Let's love and accept each other. Talk with each other. Persuade each other if we want to. But nothing that disrupts or divides the church. That's the worry. That's the concern. We want to be unified. We want to have the unity that Jesus prayed for. And to set one group against another in the church, that's not what we want to do. Not even a member who needs constant attention or care. Some of you are high maintenance, but that's okay. You're not trying to cause a problem. Just we have different personalities. There's a verse in Titus, chapter 3, verse 9. It says, avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. As for a person who stirs up division after warning him once and then twice, have nothing more to do with him, knowing that such a person is warped and sinful. He is self-condemned. Ken?
So what you got up there then is this wolf is somebody who's got an agenda perhaps, likes to have an audience, likes to have controversy because that gives him some attention in this otherwise peaceful setting.
Yeah, that's a very good summary. So these are things a wolf is not. A wolf might be a person who seeks to stir up controversy, who wants to get people to follow him, not necessarily Christ. And I forgot all the things that Ken said, but that's a good summary. There's what a wolf is not, what a wolf is. We don't want to call a person a wolf who's not. Hopefully that's a rare thing. But if there's a person who is doing the things that Ken said, we need to deal with it. We need to act decisively. There's an example of a person like that. And these are some of the things that Ken just said. There's an example of a person like that. John writes about him in 3 John chapters 9 and 10. I have written something to the church, John says, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us. And not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers and also stops those who want to and puts them out of the church. If I understand what was happening here, in John's day, there were traveling evangelists who would go around preaching the gospel, trying to do a good thing. And members of the church would put them up in their homes, show hospitality to them. And this fellow is saying, don't do that. We don't welcome those people. We don't want those teachers. And even, John said, he would put them out of the church. Well, that's a problem already. If one person can put somebody out of the church, there's something wrong with that picture. But it seems that was happening. And John wrote, even named the person by name, Diotrephes, basically saying, don't follow him. Don't follow him. If there is a person doing these things, then it is something that requires the attention of the elders. We don't want to be hasty. We don't want to make a mistake in this. But if there's a person like Diotrephes, there's a person teaching clearly a false doctrine, then that needs to be dealt with. A lot of it has to do with intent, to draw away disciples, as Paul says in his discussions with the Ephesian elders. Indifferent, these are Tommy South's words. They are self-focused, indifferent to the effect of their words and actions on the church. Unrelenting when challenged. So that's like arrogant, unrelenting when challenged. Those are the kinds of things that we need to watch out for. Let's see where we are. I know a lot of this is redundant, but we want to watch for people who would teach and promote false doctrines. Teach and promote, I think, is a key idea. I mean, we don't want any of us to believe a false doctrine, but there may be issues that we can disagree about. But if a person is teaching and promoting this issue to the extent that it's disruptive to the church, that's a problem. That is, as Paul would put it, engaging in foolish controversies. Some things are just foolish. Genealogies, dissensions, quarrels about the law. And here's the key. Is this stirring up division? If it is, that's a problem. If it's stirring up division, that's a problem. If you want to talk about, hey, let's discuss this Bible verse, it's confusing. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Great. But let's not stir up division about these things. So we mentioned already Diotrephes, a picture of a wolf that John paints in 3 John. Likes to put himself first. That's a concern. Does not acknowledge authority. This Diotrephes apparently just decided for himself who should be kicked out of the church, who should stay. That's not good. Speaks wicked nonsense against John. Refuses to welcome the brothers and stops those who want to welcome the brothers and puts them out of the church. That was Diotrephes. And John said, you've got to deal with that person. or when I come, I will. Wolves have their own agendas, even if it opposes the work of the church. Wolves do not respect the authority of appointed leaders or elders. Wolves engage in slander to get their way. Wolves actively hinder good works of others if it will help their cause. Apparently that's what Diotrephes was doing, hindering the work of others who wanted to help those traveling evangelists. So we mentioned this before. Not all beliefs are of equal importance. I don't think it's us to decide what's a salvation issue and what's not. Work that out. Work out your own salvation. But I do believe we need to make a distinction between things that are clear biblical doctrine that all of us need to embrace and things that we might understand differently or might not agree with. And when possible, all discipline should begin with personal confrontation. I don't necessarily agree with that word confrontation. I do agree with the personal part. I think what elders ought to do is go to a person and say, let's talk about, what did you mean by this? Let's have a discussion about this. Something, yeah. Confrontation for the first step, I don't like.
When you're attacking someone, they perceive you're attacking, their ears are closed.
Right, that's right.
They don't see, they don't hear,
Right.
and they don't feel. And then,
They feel mad.
well, but they don't feel, the love that you may be trying to express to them. And that can be a real problem.
Yeah, that's so good, Paul, what you said. We need to love people in our church family. If we need to go talk to an individual about something, let's do that. But don't start with my finger. Yeah, don't use the word you a lot. Use the word I. This bothers me. I don't understand what you're saying here. That's so much better than you.
It's respected. That people tend to believe what they say.
Yeah.
And so, you want to be a guide to them, and use the scriptures where you can, but you need to let them know. Don't go where the Bible doesn't go.
Right. Doug?
Yeah, I think it depends on your definition of confront. So if you're confronting an issue, you're bringing the issue to the forefront, and therefore that's okay. But if you're confronting an individual and attacking an individual, if you have that in mind as your definition, I agree.
Yeah, and I did have that in mind. But sure, confronting an issue, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to confront this issue.
This is a very, a word that has very loose definition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we've just seen that.
You talk about confront somebody and you bring something forward. You can confront somebody. Confrontation has an implicit meaning of violence.
We don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
Brian?
I was going to say personal engagement or conversation, right? If we were trying to just swap the word out to make it more appropriate for the intent, right? Maybe engagement or conversation, right? If we're talking to someone directly, we're engaging with them, we're having a conversation with them about the issue versus it being a confrontation.
Yeah. But don't overlook the word personal. I think all of us elders, church members, we need to talk to each other. If we disagree about something, if we're concerned about something, let's talk. Let's talk to each other. Not talk about each other, let's talk to each other. And as Paul said, not use the word you a lot, use the word other words. I don't understand what you meant by this. Help me understand. Let's together talk about this. And that may be all that it takes to solve that problem. Did I see another hand? Wade?
Especially when talking about it in the context, I guess, looking at the phrasing for what's being used and saying it's all discipline, right? So at this point, it's probably understood that there is, like, it's understood. Where I initially was going with this is that, have that personal conversation first to understand, like, where is that person coming from, how they're stating whatever their opinion is or their view of a certain topic is. To make sure that you know what they're trying to say, right? Maybe they're just miscommunicating, or the way you are understanding it in the moment is not the way that they're intending for you to receive the information. You know, it may just be a misunderstanding, because communication is the hardest thing we do every day. In the context of discipline, hopefully it's like that piece has already been understood. So moving to that discipline piece is to the, hey, we understand this is what you're saying, this is where you're coming from, this is where your viewpoint is, but this is where there is a misalignment of what your viewpoint is and where the scriptures lie. You know, and understanding that there is that line between what is that opinion that everyone can have, right? Versus like, look, these are the things that we all must agree on. And yes, in love, we want you to be, part of this. But if what you're doing is going to continue to push a line that is not something that is scriptural, and I get your point with the who am I to decide? At some point, somebody's got to draw a line.
Sure.
And being able to have that conversation at that level, like, look, we can agree to disagree, but you can't have it in such a way that it's going to drive people feel like they're not welcome here.
Good. I like the first thing you said. Seek first to understand. Seek first to understand. Let's all work together to protect the church, protect our unity, protect our love for each other. That's really what we're about. Let's protect the church that Jesus died for. Yeah, love one another. All right, I appreciate you being here today. Remember to come back next week for Doug, the agony and the glory of the cross. We're dismissed.